2,000 years ago, someone built a machine. It could predict eclipses decades in advance. It tracked the position of the sun, the moon, and the 5 visible planets across the sky. It told you, to the day, when the next Olympic Games would begin. It had over 30 interlocking bronze gears, hand-cut, smaller than a fingernail. And then the world forgot how to make it. For the next 1,500 years, no one on Earth would build anything like it again. No diagrams survived. No copies were made. No apprentices wrote anything down. Until, in 1900, a Greek sponge diver pulled a corroded lump out of a shipwreck, and his captain almost threw it back into the sea. Inside that lump was the only one ever found. And the deeper anyone has looked at it, the more impossible it has become to explain. This is not a story historians like to tell. You will see why. Spring 1900. A small fleet of Greek sponge divers is caught in a storm in the open Aegean. They run for the nearest land. The nearest land is Antikythera, a strip of rock between Crete and the Peloponnese, almost uninhabited then, almost uninhabited now. When the wind drops, one of the divers goes down to check the seabed. He comes back up shouting that the bottom of the sea is full of bodies and horses. The captain thinks the man is hallucinating. He goes down himself. 45 meters below the surface, he finds a Roman cargo ship that had gone down sometime before the birth of Christ. The bodies and the horses are bronze statues, looted from somewhere in the Hellenistic world and never delivered. Over the next 2 years, the Greek government runs a full salvage. Divers bring up statues, marble figures, glassware, jewelry, coins. One diver is killed by the bends. 2 more are paralyzed. Among the recovered objects is one small clump of corroded bronze, fused into a lump of stone, roughly the size of a shoebox. Nobody knows what it is. It is set aside. For the next 2 years, it sits in a museum basement, untouched, while the world celebrates everything else they pulled from that wreck. It will be the most important object on the ship, May 1902. A Greek archaeologist named Valerios Stais is going through the recovered objects in the basement of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. The lump has dried out. The corrosion has cracked along a natural fault. Stais picks it up. It splits open in his hands. Inside, embedded in the rust, is a bronze gear wheel. He can see the teeth. He can see, behind the first wheel, the shadows of more. There are letters carved into the surface. Ancient Greek. Stais publishes a short paper. He suggests the object is some kind of astronomical instrument, possibly a navigation tool. The scientific community rejects the idea outright. The reason is simple. Geared machinery is not supposed to exist in the ancient world. The Greeks had astronomers and mathematicians and philosophers, but the historical record, every textbook, every museum, every university agrees on one thing. Precision metal gearing does not appear in human civilization until the medieval period, 1400 years from now. The lump, the experts say, must be a contamination, something modern that fell into the same crate. It goes back into storage. Half a century passes. And then a physicist from Cambridge walks into the museum and asks to look at it. His name is Derek de Sola Price. He is not a classicist. He is a physicist who studies the history of science as an extension of his work in physics. He sees the fragments. There are several now, the original lump having broken further over the decades, and he understands immediately what nobody else wants to admit. This thing is not a contamination. This thing is what Stais said it was, and it is older and more complicated than anyone has been willing to say out loud. He spends the next 20 years of his life trying to read it. In 1971, the Greek government finally lets him X-ray the fragments. He works with a Greek radiologist named Charalambos Karakalos. The first images come out of the darkroom. Price stops breathing. There are not a few gears. There are dozens. There are gear trains nested inside gear trains. There are differential gearing systems, the kind of mechanism that, in the entire archaeological record of the human species, does not appear again until the 16th century. There are inscriptions running across every plate, every casing, the remains of what had once been a user's manual carved directly onto the metal. In 1974, Price publishes a paper called Gears from the Greeks. He argues, from the radiographs, that the Antikythera mechanism is a working analog computer. He argues that the ancient world had a tradition of precision mechanical engineering that history has lost. He is laughed at by some. He is ignored by most. He dies in 1983. He has still only seen a fraction of what is actually inside the bronze. 2005. 31 years after Price's paper, a new research team is given access to the fragments. They bring with them a custom-built micro-focus computer tomography scanner, the size of a smart truck. It is the most powerful imaging instrument that has ever been turned on an ancient artifact. For the first time in human history, every gear inside the corrosion can be counted, measured, and reconstructed. There are at least 30. The teeth are triangular, hand-cut, precise to within a fraction of a millimeter. The inscriptions, once fragments, are now thousands of legible Greek characters, a calendar, a list of athletic games, and a built-in instruction guide describing the mechanism's own functions. The device has a hand crank on one side. Turn it. A pointer moves across a front dial marked with the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 365 days of the Egyptian year. It shows you the position of the sun. A second pointer shows you the position of the moon. Beside it, a tiny ball rotates as it moves, half silver, half black, showing the phase of the moon for any date you choose. On the back of the device are two spiral dials. The upper one tracks the 19-year Metonic cycle, used to align lunar months with the solar year. The lower one tracks the 18-year Saros cycle. When the gears align the sun, the moon, and a lunar node, a small Greek letter appears in the spiral, a code that tells you an eclipse is coming, solar or lunar, day or night. To the hour. At the bottom of the back, a smaller dial tracks the 4-year cycle of the Pan-Hellenic Games, the Olympics. Whoever owned this machine could sit down with it and tell you, in advance, when the next games would begin. Reconstructions suggest the front dial also carried pointers for the 5 visible planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Each driven by gear trains that approximated, with shocking accuracy, the irregular motion those planets appeared to make against the stars. It was not a clock. It was a model of the sky, fitted inside a wooden box no larger than a hardcover book. A machine like this is not a prototype. You do not invent precision gearing once, in your spare time, and produce a working analog computer on your first attempt. Somewhere behind this device there had to be a tradition. Earlier, simpler mechanisms. Workshops that taught the techniques. Apprentices who learned them and passed them on. Other examples, owned by other patrons, displayed in other cities. The mathematics required to design the gearing. The way the moon's irregular motion is modeled by an off-center pin and slot, anticipating equations not formally written down until the 17th century. That mathematics is the mathematics of Hipparchus, an astronomer working on the island of Rhodes in the 2nd century before the Common Era. Several scholars believe the mechanism was built in Rhodes, possibly within Hipparchus' own school. Others point further back to Archimedes of Syracuse, who is described by Cicero, by Ovid, and by Pappus of Alexandria as having built a similar device almost 2 centuries earlier, a small bronze sphere that modeled the motion of the planets, captured by the Romans during the sack of Syracuse and put on display in the home of a Roman general. Cicero saw it with his own eyes and wrote about it. Then the sphere disappears from the record. We do not know who made the Antikythera mechanism. We do not know where it was built. We do not know how many existed. We know only that someone, somewhere in the Greek-speaking world, took the most advanced astronomical knowledge of the ancient Mediterranean and compressed it into a hand-cranked box, and then their entire tradition was erased. After the Antikythera mechanism sinks, the technology disappears. Not slowly, not in stages, completely. The Roman Empire collapses, the libraries burn, the workshops close. Whoever knew how to cut triangular gear teeth precise to 1/10 of a millimeter, they die and they take the skill with them. For more than 1500 years, no comparable mechanism is built anywhere in the world that we know of. Not in Byzantium, not in the Islamic Golden Age, despite their stunning astronomy. Not in medieval China, despite their inventions. Not in the European monasteries, despite their water clocks. The technology reappears in 14th century Europe, in the astronomical clocks of Richard of Wallingford and Giovanni da Dondi. By the time those men start building, they are inventing everything from first principles. They have no idea anyone has ever done it before. Think about what that means. A civilization had a technology. The technology vanished completely for the length of time between the birth of Christ and the discovery of America. Whatever the Greeks knew, whatever workshop in Rhodes or Syracuse or Alexandria taught it, did not survive. And the only physical proof that the technology ever existed at all is the one machine that sank off a barren island in the Aegean, where the sea preserved it under 45 meters of salt water and silt. If that ship had reached Italy, we would have no idea this knowledge had ever existed. The wreck has been revisited many times. Jacques Cousteau dove it in 1976. He pulled up bronze fragments, coins, and human bones. A new expedition began a fresh survey in 2012, using rebreathers and underwater robots. They have not finished. They keep going back. Every dive brings something up. In 2016, they recovered an articulated human skeleton from inside the hull. Possibly a slave, possibly a crew member, his bones still in position where the ship had collapsed on top of him. The mechanism itself, today, exists in 82 known fragments. Roughly a third of the original device, by volume, has never been recovered. The full back face is missing. Several of the planetary gear trains are gone. The exact configuration of the planet pointers, the gear ratios that drove them, the words inscribed on the bronze plates that fell away from the casing, all of it is, presumably, still on the seabed somewhere, scattered across a slope of broken pottery and silt. There is no guarantee that the missing pieces will ever be found. There is no guarantee that the sea has kept them at all. But every few years, somebody goes down. And every few years, something comes back up. And every time it does, the impossible part of this story gets a little bigger. The men who built the Antikythera mechanism left no names. The workshop where it was made left no records. The chain of knowledge that produced it, the teachers, the apprentices, the predecessors, the variants, left no other trace anywhere in the archaeological record of human civilization. What sank with that Roman cargo ship off a barren rock in the Aegean was not a single object. It was the proof that an entire civilization once knew how to do something the world would have to learn all over again. And it raises a question that historians do not like to answer. If we lost this, what else did we lose? Subscribe. New mystery every hour. Daily Forbidden History.